Okay, our first news story of the week. This one has been kind of weird, but Crimson Desert is out, and we are finally able to look at the game on base consoles. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the PlayStation 5 today. Yeah, basically, I'm not quite sure why, but we had access to a development build of the PlayStation 5 Pro version of the game. Base PlayStation 5, however, nobody has really seen it until launch. I guess there was a small video that was put out a day or two beforehand. But the base machine, I mean, we were kind of suspecting it should be okay, based on how the relationship typically manifests between a base version and a pro version, and we've seen the pro version, right? However, the base version is, I'd say, well, it's a game of 3/3, isn't it, John? Basically, it really depends on which of the three modes you're playing on the base PlayStation 5 that defines whether the experience is, by our reckoning at least, acceptable or not.
Yeah, actually, there's multiple paths to start from. The first thing I want to say is that I initially tested the Pro version again, but this time
Right.
the retail code, and what a difference the PSSR2 makes. Like, it's genuinely shocking. It looks so much better. I actually think the balanced PSSR2 mode looks better than the native 4K mode now. Like, it's just
Really?
it's really
Wow.
Wow.
clean comparatively. Very, very sharp. So PSSR2 was indeed a big improvement over PSSR1, as you'd hope, which is great. But then, regardless of whether you're playing on PS5 or PS5 Pro, there is one caveat. I saw some users point this out, and I tested it. Essentially, that because of the balance mode, if your display supports 120 hertz, and possibly your system set to performance mode in the settings, the game will lock into 120 hertz, right? Problem is, there's a lot of displays out there that support 120, but only at 1080p or only at
Yep.
1440p. If you do this, the game will lock itself to a low resolution, and none of the modes will do anything in terms of changing visual quality. So I've seen some people being like, "Wait, why is it so blurry in these modes?" And it seems what's happening is the game's starting at 120, and the PS5 is like, "Oh, can't do 4K," and it just drops down to 1080p or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're having that issue, there's basically that rules out the 120/40 mode, so you're left with 30 or 60. But either way, you want to set the 120 hertz mode off in those
Right.
cases. So turn that off in the settings. I do think that should be something the game handles as well. Like, if you're doing quality or performance, you should optionally be able to switch it to 60, right? So,
Yeah.
but that's a confusion point. Now on PS5, the base system, I haven't played much yet, but I've played enough to already gauge some interesting things. I'll just say right away, balanced and quality mode are basically the way to play this on PS5 base. Uh, because one, they actually use FSR3, and the internal resolution is slightly higher. So the end result, the image quality is quite okay. There is I would say a lot more ghosting in the TAA stuff. Like, I already saw some on Pro, but there's more here for sure. Things like leaves going past the camera, kind of leaving streaks, and it's a little more streaky than I'd like, but the actual image quality is pretty sharp. But performance mode, first impressions, it's not good. That very first area, like the first thing you see in the game, that little like night gathering of your troops, like that already starts dropping frames, and you've barely done anything, right?
Right.
So,
Okay.
which is a really bad sign. So, and yeah, so the performance is a lot less steady, and unlike the Pro, I think it's actually also GPU limited here, and that's why we're seeing dropped frames in these types of instances. So I think VRR can clean that up a bit, but not enough. And the other problem is that, just as the numbers, I counted it, it's 1080p, but good lord, it is blurry. There is no FSR upsampling here. Instead, it looks like just like a base TAA at 1080p, which shouldn't be bad, but it doesn't look nice. It's very, very, very fuzzy and blurry. I was actually shocked. Like when I looked at it on my OLED, I really thought like, wait, is this going to count out to like 720p or something? Like it reminded me of when I would load up Switch 1 games sometimes and they were like really blurry. Like it has that look. So, um, if you play it on a smaller monitor though, as I found when I tried to capture some, it's much less bad, but yeah. This is
Okay.
definitely the gulf in difference between the performance mode on Pro and the performance mode on base is huge. Like it's one of the biggest differences I think I've seen to date.
How much of that is down to the PSSR2, do you think?
It's two things. It's performance and PSSR2.
Right.
That's what it is. Pro gives
Mhm.
you significantly better performance and you get like infinitely better image quality.
Right. Okay. Pearl Abyss did actually give us the PC equivalent settings for all of the modes on both PlayStation 5 Pro and PlayStation 5, which is
Right.
quite interesting, right? I'm just looking at the comparison here between the performance modes between 5 and 5 Pro, and they are mostly the same, surprisingly, with a couple of changes. Model quality, medium on Pro, low on base.
Right.
Lighting quality, high on Pro, medium on base. And beyond that,
Ray tracing.
ray tracing. Well, I guess that's the lighting quality, possibly.
But that's high on Pro and
Yeah, and it's
low
medium
on base.
It's medium, actually. Well, it says medium here.
That's interesting.
On that.
But lighting and ray tracing are separate on the PC.
Yeah, it's curious. It's curious because it's like an on-off toggle, isn't it?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it is actually just an on-off toggle.
Yeah. The only other change being post-processing effect quality is low on base and it is medium on Pro. So I actually think what's quite interesting here is that the cutbacks between Pro and base are relatively mild in terms of the actual quality settings, but the presentation as you see it, John, is actually dramatically different, which is kind of like testament to, well, the benefits of having raw GPU power and a really good upscaler.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, presumably what we're looking at on base system is just spatial upscaling, right? Like it's just 1080p with TAAs, a bit blurry, and then it's just normal upscaling. I also noticed in this mode that the HUD and menus all render at 1080p as well. So it's not just the 3D, like the whole game shifts to like a lower res mode. Whereas the HUD retains the 4K output on Pro when in this mode. Because it is, upscaling to 4K as a front buffer there. So, which is why I'm very curious. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll be very curious to see what Xbox Series S looks like. Because the performance mode there is 720p with no upsampling. It says target performance is 40 FPS. And it has no ray tracing in any mode. So
yeah, that's going to be challenging, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the Series S. Tom's going to be taking care of that coverage for us. But
also, Rich, I did. I don't know. I didn't mention here, but I tried the game on my Steam Deck. It does not work on the Steam Deck, like basically at all. I did get to the main menu, but the graphics were all corrupted, and the performance was very, very low. It's not playable. It's also come out since that the game is not playable on Intel Arc GPUs at all. So they actually put out a thing about this saying if you mistakenly bought it with an Arc GPU, get your refund basically, because it doesn't work. Like it doesn't even start apparently. So, which is weirdly like a 90s throwback, right? Like, oh, I don't have a Voodoo card. I have this other Matrix card and the game won't start. That's what it feels like.
I've just been looking again just at the quality settings comparisons here, which I'll supply to Oliver. You can add on to the screen. I actually think I'll just publish it on a website as well, actually, so people can get an idea of where the trades have been made. I mean, quality mode is basically mostly ultra and high on the professional, with the exception of water quality, foliage density, and volumetric fog quality, which is medium. But it seems to be a lot of the settings that are kind of like ultra on Pro are reduced to high, and that's in the quality mode, right, on the base unit. It should be okay. I mean, I think that should be fine. You're happy with the way the quality mode looks?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think it's a good compromise. Image quality is pretty sharp. And honestly, I know we are accustomed to 30 or 60 FPS this gen, and I almost always go for it. But like, if people have been mentioning Red Dead 2 and for the controls, which I'll
Right.
talk about in a second, but that's also a 30 FPS game, and this is a pretty stable 30 FPS as well. So, I mean, it is what it is. What can I say?
Well, I think the basic idea here, the sort of notion that people were sort of putting out was they're not showing the base version of the game because it's so bad that they don't want people to know about it before it comes
it's
out.
definitely not a cyberpunk situation.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the point that we need to make here. It's just that maybe if people were expecting a really good 60 FPS performance mode, it sounds like that's up in the air and not really going to happen. But there are alternatives that are still absolutely fine. Yeah, curious, certainly curious. Just quickly looking at balanced mode here, and again, it seems to be like ultra and high on pro becomes kind of like high and medium on base, which kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Oliver, what do you make of all of this?
Oh, well, I have to report I've seen some Series S shots, and perhaps I can get some for this video just to insert. So I don't think we have time to do detailed analysis on that, but it's not good. It's very, very soft. There's a lot of breakup. No ray tracing, as was mentioned, but does have screen space reflections, which is sometimes cut on Series S, at least in the quality mode. Maybe that's not a point of especially high praise, but it's very soft. Like even just looking at my little
I just found the footage,
here.
dude. I found some footage. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's not good.
Dude, it looks like it's missing like all the displacement maps.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what the heck, dude? That's cut. Oof, that's my first impression. I'm just like whoa.
It really does look like a Switch 1 version. Like
this looks they clearly weren't targeting lower end hardware here because yikes.
No, and I do feel like in general this game was coming in hot. That was certainly my impression when I spoke to Will Powers at CES, the kind of marketing manager with Alex earlier this year. The game was kind of in the optimization phase. They weren't really willing to commit to any performance targets, and they didn't really commit to any performance targets until fairly close to launch, which doesn't, you don't want to infer too many things from what's going on with the game's development, but you can kind of read the tea leaves a little bit and say, hey, this is not a game that's like coming in necessarily with 100% AAA polish. Not that that's necessarily something that needs to be expected of every title, because Crimson Desert is obviously doing some very interesting things with its gameplay systems, with physics, with kind of the open world stuff, with the crowds, with the water, lots of cool things that aren't necessarily going to fit into a 16.7 millisecond frame budget on like a Series S, right? That's not necessarily something that's going to happen. But there are some curious configuration choices here. Like no FSR doesn't really make sense. Now I know FSR is maligned in many circles, and I mean FSR 2 or 3, right? Now, obviously not FSR 1, which is fairly maligned.
Yeah.
But FSR 2 and 3 on consoles is kind of like a standard right now. We're kind of used to that at this point, and it does have some clear image quality concessions, but I can't look at this output on PS5 or certainly on Series S and not think that FSR might have been an improvement there, right? Despite its cost, despite its rendering foibles, despite its image quality foibles. So yeah, this game really seems to like PS5 Pro. It seems to like PSSR. It seems to like the enhanced RT acceleration in PS5 Pro. That was abundant in John's coverage, and I'm sure PSSR 2 makes a big difference, as I've seen with my own eyes in a variety of titles at this point. But yeah, the experience in the other consoles does not quite seem up to par in those 60 FPS modes on Series S. Maybe this should be a title that you really consider for quality mode, and maybe the developers should consider patching in something like FSR 3 just to get image quality up to an acceptable level of sharpness.
Also, it's interesting looking at this Series S footage without the ray tracing enabled, and it really does change the look of the game pretty significantly. Like it's cool they have it working without RT, but it really has a pretty strong negative impact on the overall visuals, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John, you were talking earlier about a kind of Red Dead Redemption effect. Is this kind of like in terms of like animation and latency?
So this is, yes. Okay, there's a lot. Man, this game is weird, which is why I think I like it. But it's a game that puts a lot of emphasis on animation priority, right? It's pretty heavy. And I'm able to acclimate to that pretty well, I think, and it doesn't really bother me. I actually kind of like the way that feels. But I had forgotten from the old Red Dead discussions that a lot of people really don't like that, and you can tell right away. I actually think it's more responsive than Red Dead, because Red Dead has a lot of weird stuff with like having to tap X to move, like GTA style, like at a decent clip and other things like that. But it is definitely more of like an animation priority game. But I think the game in general has. I'm reading the results and it's kind of going exactly as I expected. There's a subset of people that really don't like it, and then there's a subset that are finding it. I've heard somebody describe it as AAA Euro-jank, which is kind of funny.
What?
Basically, it's like, and this is why. So this is what captivated me in the first place. This game feels like it was made in like a weird bubble where the developers are like not aware of like how games normally should work, quote unquote should, mind you.
Hmm.
And they make a lot of decisions about like everything that just puts typical games on their head, like from the interface to the controls to the way saving works to like how do you upgrade your character and deal with difficult bosses, uh like what it's just it doesn't really spell out a lot of things that clearly. The controls are really convoluted and weird and like just different from normal games. Like when you have difficult choke points in the game, you'll be like, wait, what do I need to do? But like when I got to a first difficult boss, I was just like, I went off just adventuring again, and I stumbled upon enough stuff to sort of like prepare my character better for the battle. But then I also ended up discovering ways to kind of mess with the boss and cheese him around that made it a bit easier as well. And there's just this sense of like it lets you kind of poke and prod at it in weird ways, and you get responses from it in that sense. Uh, that I find really engaging because like so why don't open worlds always work for me in a lot of bigger games? And the problem is that it's like I've seen behind the curtain and I know what's out there. I know the way the games are largely built, and it's predictable, and you kind of just expect certain things. Like I can walk all the way over to this other mountain and I know the types of things that will occur. I know the types of systems that are there. There's usually nothing that's surprising, and so it just ends up becoming a lot of empty space. And open world immersion really hinges upon this like feeling of both atmosphere being in a place, but also like a sense of wonder. It's why Breath of the Wild I think worked really well at the time. It's why Death Stranding like really grabbed my attention, because there were so many unique mechanics and just like the thick atmosphere and just this feeling of the unknown. And I think Crimson Desert does that as well, where there's just a lot of weird stuff in it, and there's so much unknown about it that it makes it just somehow like super interesting to play. And so I think a mainstream audience that wants like a more polished up expected type of experience is probably going to bounce off this super hard. And also the first like hour or two is it's pretty bad, I gotta say. Like it's a really poor introduction to this game. The initial quests they have you do and some of the explanations are really, really bad. But like once you get over that hump, it opens up and you just start exploring. Like that first exploration outing I did, like changed my whole view of the game, and I'm having a great time. I've been playing it a lot since then, mainly on PC, mind you. But I like it. I think it's ultra flawed. Like it's like a very 7 or 8 out of 10 game that I just happen to find really engaging to play. And it reminds me of I'm somebody that likes Jurassic Park Trespasser. Let me just say that. I like that game. That game is way more broken than this though, but I like it. I like what it was doing. There was a lot of interesting stuff that happens. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for in these types of like open-ended games. And it provides it. So if you want some kind of like janky, I don't know, like Dragon's Dogma mixed with like Euro-jank kind of thing, then maybe check it out.
Sorry, I really need a definition here.
Yeah.
Euro-jank.
I think maybe you're
it's like-
slandering a continent a little bit too much there.
No, this has become like a known like descriptor for games, usually from Eastern Europe, that are like usually very, very ambitious in trying to do things, but they have a lot of like implementation issues and flaws, and just kind of are a little bit unstable overall, right? Like they don't have a lot of polish, but they have a ton of heart, and that could make for some really interesting times.
Is there any examples you can cite of a game that's exhibiting this remarkable phenomenon?
So, I mean, honestly, people said stuff like Sacred 1 and 2,
Right,
and
okay.
various other things like that. But one that stands out to me, I might say, is something like the original Stalker,
Right.
Okay,
which
right.
is insanely ambitious for the time. And they try to do everything with that game, and they fumbled in a lot of ways. But what's there is commendable for just being like crazy ambitious and at least ultra interesting. And if that worked for you, it really worked for you, right? But if you
Okay,
tried to play
right.
it like a normal video game, you were probably going to bump up against it and be like, what is this? Right? And there's plenty of games like that where they tried to do something and just couldn't necessarily stick it, but because of the ambitious and the weirdness, it like really kind of gets you into it.
Okay, I think I'm beginning to understand, but it's I'm not quite sure it's quite there
I
for
think
me.
the
But I
Gothic
understand
series
what
is
you
like
mean.
that, maybe.
Right. Okay.
I don't know. It's honestly, it's not quite the same, but like I would even put some of the Bethesda games. They're not really Euro-jank per se, but like you go back to some of the older Bethesda games, especially, and they're super janky, but it didn't matter, right?
Okay.
Like Oblivion on the original Xbox. Sorry, not Oblivion, but Morrowind. When you play it on the original Xbox, it barely works. It's surprised it even boots at all, but people loved it, and it was just crazy what you could do at the time. Like there wasn't a console game ever like that. Or one that I was trying to remember before is Silent Storm, which was this like tactical game with like mechs and troops where you could like level whole buildings, and it let you do so much stuff, but like you could do stuff to the point where you'd actually just break the game and get stuck like all the time. So it had major problems, but what it was trying to do was so interesting and ambitious. You're like, all right, I'm jiving with this. So I feel a bit of that in Crimson Desert, but it's got this like Korean flair to it that also makes it its own thing. So it's a strange game. It's one that I could never possibly review for people, right? Like I don't know how to score a game like this. I just don't.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm kind of almost reminded, just on the description that you're talking about, of kind of what was happening with Black Myth Wukong, where it was pretty obvious that their sensibilities for what constituted a console game were quite removed from expectations.
Yes.
I guess it's similar here based on what you're saying.
Black Myth Wukong was a very polished action game, though, I would argue.
Comparatively, yeah.
And this is more like I don't know if this would qualify as Euro-jank, but like I was kind of reminded of Dragon's Dogma 2 when you were describing it to me early on, which seems kind of like a similar kind of vibe there.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely some Dragon's Dogma DNA in this, for sure.
Well, coverage plans. What are we going to be doing with this? Well, it's a tricky one, right? Because everybody wants to know how good it is. And that's fine. And they want to know now. The issue being that, especially on a game of this scale, it actually takes time for us to do the work. I think what's probably fair to say is that we could offer some initial first impressions, as John has just done, and we'll try and get something out maybe on the website by the time you've seen this, where you probably would have seen it by now. And we can also publish those settings for each of the modes on each of the two PlayStation consoles, which will give you some idea of how it scales, at least in terms of features, right? But it really does sound to me like the key differentiators there, John, are basically performance and image quality between the Pro and the base unit. But I guess if 30 and 40 FPS modes generally pass muster, then that's kind of okay, right? It's just a bit of a shame that the scalability to 60 is just isn't there. I guess they would have had to have gone down to an even lower resolution to achieve that.
Yeah, exactly. If it's GPU bound, as I'm thinking.
And if you're saying there's image quality issues at native 1080p.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually a good case where I see this at 1080p where the FTAA group starts to make a little more sense. You know what I mean? Like egregious situations like this where it just smears the image. I like TAA, but I like good TAA.
Right.
When it does this, the results are not appealing.